Hey everybody, this is Franco, and today I want to talk about the Centroid Acorn. This is an exciting new product that is available now, and I'm pretty stoked about it. And I want to take a couple of minutes to share with you what I've learned about the Centroid Acorn. Is it the best DIY CNC available? Well, maybe by the end of this presentation, you'll be able to answer that question. Who is Centroid? It's important to talk about who they are because right now there are a lot of people entering the CNC space. So it's exciting. There's a lot of options out there for the DIY, hobby or semi-professional CNC user. There are control systems coming from all over the place. There's the tried and true options like Mach3 and Mach4. There's a whole bunch of Linux-based systems out there that I personally don't know much about, but I know they're out there. They've been out there for a long time. There's also all these Kickstarter companies that they just seem like they're coming out of the woodwork. I don't know a lot about them, but it seems like every one of their brother is trying to come to the market right now with some kind of CNC control system. That can be a little overwhelming because you're not really sure who to go with. Well, who is Centroid? Centroid has over 30 years of experience building CNC control systems. Their business is located in Pennsylvania, and as far as I can tell, it's a family-owned business, and it's it's pretty cool to see that happen. They currently offer a full line of industrial-grade CNC retrofit solutions, so they can put a control on just about anything, any kind of lathe or milling machine or router or any kind of machine you can imagine. They have a complete retrofit kit for that application. Also, many new CNC machines ship from the factory with Centroid controls. So I know personally where I work, there is some CNC equipment that brand new came from the factory with a Centroid control on it. Centroid also builds their own line of CNC equipment. They make some 5-axis machines, and I think it's kind of maybe sort of specialized for the automotive industry, but very expensive 5-axis milling machines. They are now offering this same industrial grade software and hardware in a package that's accessible to the DIY user. So that's pretty cool. So these guys have been doing this for a long time. This isn't just a Kickstarter company, a couple of people in a basement that decided they want to try to make a product for CNC. These are guys and gals who have been doing this for 30 years. What is the Acorn CNC Control Kit? It is a combination of software and a high-speed motion control board. So this system will let you control up to 4 axes using industry standard step and direction signals. That's important because most of the equipment you're going to use in your CNC builds, your retrofits, you're going to want to use step and direction signals. You can interface with switches and sensors using 8 inputs. So the board has 8 inputs on it for reading your limit switches and things like that. You can also control external devices using 8 outputs. So you have 8 inputs, you also have 8 outputs. That's how you can turn your relays off and on to control pumps and things like that. You also, and this is important, the system it works with industry standard M and G code programs. So all your standard commands that you would be used to working with on industrial grade CNC machines, this system does it because it's born and bred from an industrial grade CNC control. You can also, and this is really cool, you can quickly generate toolpaths right at the machine using the Centroid Intercon conversational programming system. This is something that's easily overlooked but is incredibly valuable. The other control systems, they try to facilitate this, but they don't always do it very well. But this system has a really good, very mature conversational interface that lets you create, pretty complicated, multi-tool programs with a lot of geometry, and you can do it very quickly right at the machine. So, what is the Acorn CNC control kit? Well, it's designed to work with all different types of machines, but it's really well suited for things like bed mills, knee mills, lathes, CNC routers. So really, these types of machines, this system is just very well suited for it. Now in the slide, I'm showing larger equipment, but all your the machines you're buying from Precision Matthews or from Grizzly, your Geo 704, your PM25, PM30 MV, all these types of machines. This kit is great for that. The Acorn CNC conversion kit, the Acorn kit here is basically it's your foundation for a complete, fully functional CNC control system. This image comes from the Centroid website, and I know it's small, you can't read the font on here. You can check it out on their website, but I just wanted to throw it on here to give you an overall picture that this board can facilitate the connections, all the connections you need. Your drivers, probes, limit switches. It has a DB25 header on here. You can plug this thing right into a gecko board. You don't have to solder anything. You just literally DB25 cable, it plugs right in. You have an input for an encoder, a real encoder. That's a great feature for a board at this price point. You also have an analog output, 0 to 10 volts to run your variable frequency drives. This connects to your PC using an Ethernet connection. I mean, that's the best thing you can get. It's better than USB. The kit, they supply you with a power supply, which I think is really nice considering the price. And as we mentioned before, you have 8 inputs, 8 outputs. So you can facilitate a lot of connections to sensors and switches and relays. So the Acorn's not, this isn't some sort of little rinky-dink, board that you're going to buy on eBay. This is a fully functioned, feature-rich system. All right, now let's talk about the board a little bit. So it is the board, it has an onboard AM335X, 1 gigahertz ARM Cortex A8 processor. And this is what's controlling the CNC motion. The board is not dependent on the PC CPU for the critical motion control, for inputs, for outputs, and other machine tool functions. The Acorn board handles all that. So that means you get rock solid CNC control. It doesn't hiccup or get bogged down by Windows interfering with the PC CPU, by the hard drive spooling up, all these weird little things that can affect the performance. That's not an issue because the Acorn board is actually its own processor, and it handles all of that. And without going into too much detail, I'll let you do your research on your own. But I can tell you that the hardware that they chose to build this board is built around a single board computer called the BeagleBone Green, I believe, comes from Seed Studio. This is a single board computer that was actually developed with CNC control in mind. So it's different than like a Raspberry Pi or something like that. This board was actually designed from the ground up to do CNC control. And it has some features on it that the other single board computers don't have that make this board perform better for that type of application. So it's a really good choice to base this system around. So there it is. There's the board. Talk about it a little bit more. The board has 8 optically isolated inputs and 8 outputs, 6 open collector and 2 relay. So it does have 2 relays built right onto the board. It has a DB9 connection for an encoder. So this is a big deal. This board actually facilitates connection to a real encoder. And we'll talk about why that's good later on in the presentation, but it's there. It has a 12-bit analog, a 0 to 10 volt DC output for controlling variable frequency drives. So that's important if you want to run a a VFD. This board can do that. It can handle 4 axes. It's a has 4-axis drive interface connections. So you got X, Y, and Z, or maybe a rotary axis. If you have a router and you have 2 motors for your Y-axis, like you have a traveling column type of machine, this can handle that. So you have 1 for X, 2 for Y, 1 for Z. It has a reliable Ethernet connection for communicating with the Windows 10 PC. Ethernet's the best connection you can get. It's better than USB. It's more stable. So there's really good features on this board. It also has a legacy DB25 connection, and it conforms to the Gecko G540 pinouts. So this is really cool. So if you have, let's say you're an old Mach3 user and you want to upgrade to, something better, you don't have to go through a lot of trouble. You can sort of swap out your old stuff, bring the Acorn in, plug it right into that DB25 connection, and off you go. And it conforms to the Gecko pinouts. So that's kind of like the industry standard for that stuff. It's a really nice feature. Don't overlook that. It also has screw down terminals. So anything that goes to the DB25 connection, you also have access to it through these all these screw terminals that are all over the edge of the board. And they're good. It's a well-constructed board. No need for soldering. Everything can be connected either through the DB25 or through the screw down connectors. And as we mentioned before, this board is compatible with all motors and all drives that use step and direction inputs. So you can buy really high-end, super expensive motors and drives. If you want, you can jump out on eBay and buy the really inexpensive, bargain stuff. It's all going to work with this board. All right, let's talk about the software. The software is called CNC12. So what this is a high-performance CNC control software. It has a 2,000 line acceleration and deceleration look-ahead. It can read 1,200 blocks per second. It can control up to 4 axes. You can do 3-axis simultaneous control. So all your 3D surfacing and contouring, this software is very well suited for it. I don't have it on the slide, but there's also some features built into the software that'll help, sort of smooth out a lot of that 3D motion. It's some proprietary algorithms that Centroid has to improve the performance of your high-speed 3-axis machining, your surfacing toolpaths. This software is touch screen compatible, so you don't have to have a touch screen to make it work. But if you do, it completely enhances the use of the product. So I actually went out and picked up a touch screen, and I'll never go back. It works great. What they've done is on the right side of the screen, they've made this virtual keypad, basically. So all the buttons that would have been like hard buttons, mechanical switches and stuff that you'd have to pay a lot of money for, they took all that functionality and they built it into a touchscreen format. It's really cool. And as we mentioned before, the software is 100% compatible with industry standard M and G code programming. So that's really important because when you're dealing with like maybe some of the Kickstarter type of companies or some of the companies that have just entered into the CNC market and are trying to build software and controls, you'll find out that not all of the standard M and G codes are there. They don't have functionality for canned cycles. Or the way that they interpret the M and G codes may not conform with, FANUC type A or FANUC type B. They wind up doing things their own way. That's not a problem with the software. It is reading the M and G codes in industry standard format, just like you would see on any professional CNC machine, because this is professional CNC control software. It has user-definable custom macros, and they can be assigned to M codes. You can also assign those custom macros to buttons on the interface. There's a couple of auxiliary buttons. You can write your own macros and make buttons execute them, or you can attach your macros to an M code. That's a really good feature. It's very flexible. And like most CNC control systems, there's a PLC script running in the background. You can edit that, and that basically gives you unlimited levels of customization. So that's there if you want to get into it. The documentation for all of this is available. It's pretty good. And the programming format for the PLC is, it's discernible. It's not a very cryptic language. You can read the manual and read through the PLC program, and it makes sense. So there's documentation there. The documentation is really good. Now, most users will not need to edit the PLC script, and the reason is their setup wizard will configure everything for you. Matter of fact, it's probably going to configure like 80–90% of anything you could imagine. Their wizard works really well. So most people aren't really going to have to mess around with the PLC. The setup wizards, it's going to take care of you. It'll have you covered. But it's nice to know that all that functionality is there if you need it. The software supports all standard CAN cycles. Anything you can imagine is available. It's there and it works. The system handles backlash compensation. And that's a big deal because, that's a problem right now with Mach4. And it's a problem with other CNC control systems available for the DIY user. They don't handle backlash compensation well. And the reason is it's complicated. As your software is, planning the trajectory for your cut, it's not just calculating where you want it to go. It's also calculating all the adjustments, all the compensations for backlash. And it has to synchronize all these things. And if you're doing high-speed machining or 3D surfacing, right, it's got to do all three axes at one time. It's taxing on the software, and it's complicated to figure out. So what you're going to find is, this was a frustration for me with Mach4, there really weren't a lot of options to make backlash compensation work. I wound up having to buy a very expensive motion control board to find someone that had backlash compensation working for Mach4. So I threw this in here. The Centroid software and hardware handles backlash compensation very well. Software handles probing, does it really well. All different types of probing. It handles cutter compensation, obviously. It does that just the way it's supposed to. Work offsets, your G54, G55, it's all there. This control system will handle subprograms and macros. That's a really big deal because this is actually one of the first DIY packages that handles it's called Fanuc Macro B. So let's call it Macro B. It's do while statements, go to, all these commands that you can use to write, sort of automate things. The software can do it. It can do it just like a real CNC machine would, because this is real CNC control software. It also has a very full-featured conversational programming interface. So if you don't know how to write M and G code programs, that's okay, because the conversational programming interface will help you create your programs. And it's way better than what you had in Mach3. Mach3 really, it didn't do that function very well. Mach4 is better at that than Mach3 was, but this software has, the CNC12 software from Centroid has a really good conversational programming interface And it's that alone is a powerful point. There's so many more features in the software. I don't have time to talk about all of them. If you want to read it, look at their website, check out their documentation. But the gist of it is this is a real full-featured CNC control system. This isn't anything that's done halfway. This is industry standard. It's designed to cater to professionals, and they have been catering to professionals for a very long time. And all that experience and knowledge is translating now into a product that's at a price point available for hobbyists and DIY users. The software is available in 3 levels. There's a free version, there's what they call the pro version, and then there's the ultimate version. The free version is going to be powerful enough for users who need simple programs less than 50 kilobytes. And 50 kilobytes is actually a fairly good sized program. So if you're just doing basic shapes, basic profiles, you'll probably be okay with the free version. The pro version, it allows for longer programs up to 4 megabytes. It accommodates more work offsets, more tool offsets. It gives you more probing routines, and it actually gives you some limited scanning routines. So the pro version is probably where most people, I think that's probably what most people, if you can't use the free version, if you need a little more, I think pro version is going to cover 99.9% of the people. 4 megabytes is a pretty big program. There's plenty of work offsets in the pro version. Plenty of tool offsets, and the probing routines are cool, and it even, like it says, limited scanning. So it gives you a couple of probing routines where you can take up to, I believe, 2,500 points. Maybe it's 25,000 points. I have to check the documentation. But the point of it is it's not just picking up edges, finding the center of circles. They actually give you an option in the pro version to do 3D scanning. 3D scanning of complex surfaces. That's really cool. The ultimate version allows unlimited program length, has even more work offsets, even more tool offsets. It gives you every type of probing and scanning routine you can imagine. So there's probably some users out there that need that. And if you need it, it's available for $4.99, which, that's not cheap, but really, when you think about what you're getting, the level of software and what it's doing, $4.99 is a huge bargain for that functionality. And as I said before, I think most users, if you can't get away with the free version, I think most people will be fine with the $99 pro version. That's what I plan on using for my projects, and I really can't see a need for anything more than that for what I'm going to get into. The software, it supports an X keys keypad, and you can also use an Xbox controller as a remote pendant. I really like the Xbox controller for that. That's what I'm using. It's pretty easy to configure. You use a software, a little add-in piece of software that costs $6 to help the Xbox controller talk to the CNC software. It's a really nice setup. It's really clean. It's easy to configure. It's definitely worth the $6. If you want to spend a little bit more money, I think somewhere in the neighborhood of $100, you can get one of these X keys keypads. They're both good options, and I just wanted to put that in there because a lot of people, they expect to be able to use a pendant. Well, you have good choices, good options for pendants. Frustration-free installation. This is a big deal. In fact, this is one of the best things about this Acorn package from Centroid. There is seamless integration between the software and the motion controller. The software and the hardware come from the same company. It's designed by the same group of people. It's built to work with each other. There's no need to deal with, all these third-party hardware plugins and all these drivers and all these things that you have to configure. Updates to the CNC12 software will automatically send the firmware updates to the Acorn motion controller board. So it's like one-stop shopping. When you do get a software update, the CNC12 software is taking care of the Acorn board for you. It's really nice. Where if you're a Mach3 user or a Mach4 user, you're used to this like world where, you know, ArtSoft gives you the software, but then Warp 9 or some other motion controller board, you know, they have all their plugins and everything. So you're always like second guessing, like, well, if I take the update to Mach4, you know, are all my plugins going to stop working? Or, you know, I want to take the latest update for Mach4, but I can't because the plugins only work with the older version of Mach4. And you just, you know, you feel like you're constantly reinventing the wheel in that paradigm, where with the Centroid system, all those problems go away because the people who make the software also control the hardware, and they just work with each other really nicely, and it is way easier to deal with compared to the situation where your software and your hardware come from two different companies. Frustration-free installation. So they give you the setup wizard to help put your package together. And what's cool about this is it has pre-configured profiles for many popular drivers, such as, you know, Gecko, ClearPath, and LeadShine. So like literally, like all the little things that you need to like sit and figure out and search on the internet and read manuals and ask questions, all that stuff is like pre-engineered for you. All you have to do is like literally click a radio button and it's there. And also, if you want to do something that's not there, it's really easy to make changes to these default settings. So if you're using something that's listed with a radio button, you click and you're there. If you're using something that's not, well, you can change it. But this wizard is really nice. It really makes it easy to set up your CNC system. Another nice thing about this is, you know, it's simple, but you know, the old paradigm where your software and your hardware are from two different companies, you run into this scenario where you want to change a setting, but you're not sure if that setting is in the software itself or if the setting is part of the plugin for your hardware. That can be really confusing. But with the Centroid package, that confusion goes away because the software and the hardware are controlled by the same group of people. It comes from the same company. You don't have that duplication of, parameters. If there's a setting, there's only one place to change the setting. You don't have to look in two different places and second guess and experiment. It's just a lot more straightforward. This is really cool. So they provide detailed wiring diagrams for, you know, all the popular motors and drivers and associated switches and sensors. I have one of them here on this slide, but there are many available. When you go to their website, they have these wiring diagrams for all the popular hardware. And what's nice is even if you're not using exactly, you know, what's listed, chances are what you have is going to be similar to one of these products. So it makes your life a lot easier to install this. You can really tell when you look at these wiring diagrams that the people at Centroid, you know, you can tell that they know what they're doing, and you can tell that they're used to dealing with professionals. You know, they're used to dealing with people who don't have a lot of time to mess around and you know, play with things. You can tell they're dealing with people that just want to get their machines up and running and make money with them. So this is really cool. This documentation is great. Their user manuals are comprehensive, they're easy to understand, and they also have a good online user forum. There's YouTube videos are appearing every day that are explaining how to use their products. So lots of good support for this product. It's really well documented. It's really well supported. So why is Centroid better? Why is it a better option? First of all, like we mentioned before, the guys at Centroid are professionals. So they, for 30 years, have been catering to the professional CNC world, people who make a living with their equipment. And they're taking all that experience from the professional world and they're entering into the hobby and DIY world, where the other options are the opposite. They started out in the hobby DIY world, and now they're trying to maybe like penetrate the professional market. So it's just a totally different paradigm. The people at Centroid, their business is built around supporting real machinists who count on their equipment to make a living. That's what they've been doing for 30 years. The CNC12 software is very stable and has many years of proven performance in shops all over the world. So, like we said, people who are making parts for a living don't have time to experiment and be guinea pigs and try things. They just want their products, their hardware and their software to work. So the CNC12 software it's been established. The bugs have been worked out of it. It's fully functional. You don't have to sort of like wonder like, hey, does this feature work? Oh, it's not available yet. Oh, it'll be available in the next release. Oh, there's bugs with it. We know there's bugs. Yeah, we're going to fix it on the next release. All that stuff that's been worked out. It was worked out a long time ago. So all the features work, and they've been working for many years. And as we said before, there's no need to constantly update plugins and drivers. The Centroid software fully supports turning. This is another big deal. If you're used to using Mach3, then you know that Mach3 turning was always kind of an afterthought. It really wasn't. It wasn't real good. There were a lot of things that you had to work around. Mach4 is better. It accommodates turning better, but the Centroid software and hardware is fully functional. It handles turning very well. They've been retrofitting turning centers for years, so it's there. It's ready to go. Another really good point, it utilizes a differential quadrature encoder feedback for the spindle. So their board, you can buy a real encoder, plug it right into their board, and what happens is you now have extremely accurate CNC threading. You have really good, true, constant surface speed control if you want to, do G96 constant surface speed spindle control. And it has industry standard tool and work offset control. So, like I said, in Mach3, the way that it did work offsets and especially tool offsets was kind of weird. You had to work around the shortcomings. That's not a problem with Centroid. So if you're into turning and you want to put their product on a lathe, it's really good. It's there. It's not an afterthought. It works. So even though it's a full-featured, very powerful package, it's easy to set up because there's less confusion. It's just a lot easier to work with this because the hardware and the software come from one company, and it's really well thought out. So their wizard really helps. All the pre-configured settings are good. It's just a well-engineered product. I just don't know how else to describe it other than that. And right now, it is a phenomenal deal at $265. At first, when I saw the price for this package, I was like, oh, this can't be any good. That's too cheap. How could it be worth anything? It's only $265. This stuff, in my opinion, should really be selling for about $500. But right now, they're offering at $265. It's sort of a promotional price because they're trying to get people. They're trying to get people's attention and build up, the user base. It's a bargain. It's a bargain. For $265, I highly recommend giving it a try. Personally, I plan on converting all of my Mach3 and Mach4 stuff over to this Centroid Acorn system, and I'm quite happy to do so. All right, well, that's my last slide, And I hope this was helpful. This video is a little bit longer than what I wanted it to be, but there's a lot of information in here, and I wanted to cover it all. I will throw some hyperlinks in the description of this video so you can jump out to the Centroid website and see what that's all about. And I may even create a Dropbox location to put some documentation in so you can look at their documentation. We'll see about that. But I'll put the hyperlinks in the description so you can see their website and get to it easily. All right, well, thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this, and be safe.